Boys and girls, the Carnage house is back in the house. Ew! So this is going to be the Cameron Experience podcast. This is the first episode where we have Alex, Andy and Dougal interviewing the best and the brightest, and Fiona's behind the camera organising. Armin's provided a shisha, and the first talent to be aired on the Cameron Experience podcast is a friend of the channel, a friend who has grown in his own right with his own YouTube channel focused on political and cultural commentary, and as unlikely as it may be, has surpassed the reach of the Carnage House in the short few months he's been active. Joel Jammal, welcome back onto the Carnage House.
Pleasure to be here, Dougal.
Now, Joel has been a very busy man. You've been, particularly on your YouTube channel, doing a lot of work with Ricardo Bosi, Romeo Georges, a few other people. But what I want to talk about today is in Australia, the 6th of January.
That's right.
And one of your strong points, one of your strengths is international politics, but specifically US politics. Andy's smoking that shisha. That's going to be there for a while for those who are listening on audio.
Listening on audio.
Today was the listening on audio. So today was the Georgia Senate elections. Is that correct?
That's right.
And we had Republicans apparently look like they're going to lose both. But why don't you explain the Georgia election, why it's important, what's at stake, and what's the situation?
Sure. So the last we left off, as you guys know, we had a situation where the Republicans won 50 seats out of 100 in the Senate. 46 of those seats were won by the Democrats, and there were 2 independents who were siding with the Democrats. This runoff election that we had in Georgia, there were 2 seats up for grabs. Democrats haven't won there for 20 years. Yet it looks like after today, they're going to win both those seats. At the time of the filming, I'm not sure when this is going to be released, but at the time of the filming, it looks like Warnock, who's one of the Democrats who ran, he's going to win. He's going to beat Loeffler. And it's also looking like the other Republican that's running, he's also going to lose. He's only leading by about 1,000 votes. And the districts that have, the counties that still have remaining votes, it's not looking promising at all. They're very heavy Democrat. A lot of mail-in ballots still yet to be counted. It's not looking good. So,
Sorry, and so in terms of the Senate balance, so Republicans currently have 50, Democrats have 46, 2 independents. So that leaves 50 to 48. If Democrats win, that goes 50-50.
That's right.
What does that mean in terms of the actual politics of the American government?
So when there's a tie, it's the vice president who ends up being the president of the Senate. That's the actual title, and they will be the tiebreaker. So if Joe Biden wins, for example, that'll mean that Kamala Harris, who's the most progressive candidate, more progressive than what's his name? Than Bernie Sanders in 2019, her voting record, she will be the tiebreaker for all of these votes.
And what types of issues is she very progressive on that would affect the American government? What is the top 3?
Well, the funny thing is she's both progressive and not progressive. She was very progressive in 2019 on a number of different things. I think she's pro reparations. She's pro big tech censorship. She's pro a lot of things.
Black Lives Matter, police reforms.
No, look, I don't know about that, man. I don't know about that. I mean, her record on that, historically, because she was a prosecutor, is very tarred.
Shocking.
It's shocking.
But in terms of her public persona...
Yeah, her public persona, who knows? Yeah, they swing with the wind, we'll put it that way. Especially Joe Biden. I mean, he wrote 4 of the crime acts that led to the mass incarceration of black people, which is not great. So the progressives don't like either of these 2.
So, Alex and Andy, I haven't given you a turn to touch the mic yet. Popcorn Chicken, throw the ball over to you. How you doing?
I'm going well. Pleasure to be here.
You're going to need to bring that mic to you slightly.
Is this my personal mic?
Yeah.
Is it per se?
Yeah.
Good.
We're back. Apologies for the cut-off. We had a quick malfunction while Alex moved the mic. I don't blame you for it, bro, but let's bring you in again. How you doing?
So good. Even better than last time.
Andy, how you doing?
Doubly fantastic now.
Okay, so the question we just asked Joel, which he got into, I'm going to ask him again, is the importance of the Senate election, which is currently at 50 Republican, 46 Democrats, plus 2 Democrat-leaning independents, is 50 to 48. If they win these 2 Georgia seats, as they look like they're doing, that goes to 50-50, where the tie-break happens by the vice president. So essentially, the power of the Senate is determined by who wins the presidential election. So Donald Trump looks like he's been written off by the main media establishment, which now includes Fox, which was previously Trump's biggest or essentially only mainstream media cheerleader. You then have the entire Democrat establishment media, ABC, NBC, MSNBC, on top of the Democratic Party. You even have several Republicans who are now not backing Trump as well, and Trump is fighting this fight with a few Republicans, and essentially no media support and no one giving him a chance. I believe the Electoral College may have certified Biden. Anyway, there's a big thing happening tomorrow, January 7 in Australia.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep,
Tell us, can you just explain what all the questions that I have and what's happening on
Sure.
the presidential election and in particular?
Would you like a summary in terms of what's brought us from November 3rd? Or
Exactly.
I'll jump straight. Okay, sure. Look, with regards to the what we've seen in the past few weeks, I mean, as you know, I host the ARC, and I've had every week we've found new things to report on, basically. Whether that be the situation with some places which have 700% turnouts in the areas. I think there was one county where they had a 30% decrease in population, yet they had a greater voter turnout than a time when they had more people living there, which is insane. That doesn't make any sense. You know, we had tens of thousands of dead people voting in some states. We had, you know, there was Sharpie Gate. If you go through the ARC, there are so many different segments where Ricardo and I are just laughing our heads off because of how many problems there were coming up through this election. There was a water burst that supposedly happened in one place, so they stopped counting. Which never ended up happening. There wasn't a water burst. There was suitcases under desks, which they found where they could have had up to 60,000 votes in these 3 suitcases they found in Pennsylvania. It's just
Is that where they cut down, they shut everyone else off from coming in? They basically sent every single other person home, including the media. They locked all the doors, and then they looked like they were about to go home. But anyway, these 3 or 4 people stayed behind, and then the CCTV captures the moment where as soon as everyone goes, they pull these suitcases out. It's like something out of a mafia movie where they're rigging an election. It's
absolutely insane. The smoking gun, which I think was in Pennsylvania, was the suitcases coming out. In any other situation, that would be game over, set match for Pennsylvania certifying their votes, but it's not the case.
Well, you think about it, they spent 4 years on Russia with no evidence, okay? They basically tried to undermine a total election without a single shred of evidence. They used basically the Steele dossier, which was compiled, including using Yahoo news articles.
Yeah,
right.
Who sponsored the Steele dossier as well?
That's it, the DNC, right? So it's a party-sponsored document. And then you have actual footage of people wheeling out votes, counting votes after all the media's gone, and we apparently don't have any real substantial evidence of election fraud.
And there's no time for any investigations. We've got to be very, very quick on this stuff. It's absolutely crap. And the thing is, that's what brings us up to date after election day. You know, there were places, just like with Georgia, there were places that said we're going to stop counting for the night, and then you had all these big jumps on election day, and now we're in a situation where Trump has about 6 to 10 swing states, or states where there's contentions.
Where's that? Georgia, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so the main ones
Nevada,
the main ones are Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, and New Mexico. They're the 7 where there's definitely going to be contentions. Tomorrow, basically. That's what brings us up to date to tomorrow. Now, the situation with that is we're going to end up in a situation where a lot of these states are going to be challenged. How do you challenge these votes? Because what happened on December 14th, all the electors from all these states, they came together and they said, these are our electors that we're putting forward. The problem is there are 6 or 7 of these states where they actually sent rival electors. So what does that mean? That means that in 6 or 7 of these states, both the Republicans and the Democrats sent their electors to basically be counted by Mike Pence. The count by Mike Pence is happening tomorrow. So he's going to come to Arizona, which is the first state. He's going to see that he's got an envelope from both the Democrats and the Republicans. Legislators. So he's electors. So he's going to be like, okay, what do I do with this? He's going to have the choice. Do I count them for both of them? I can't probably do that. Do I pick one, or do I put them both aside so no one gets them? I think that's the most likely situation, but I'm not sure. in order to contest any of these envelopes, you need at least one senator and one member of Congress, which is where Nancy Pelosi operates, and they need to put a written submission contending these states before this happens. That's happened with these 7 states, basically. We've got 180 House members out of 435 in Congress, where Nancy Pelosi is. 180 Republicans saying, no, this is ridiculous. We're going to be raising contentions. Even the leader of the Republicans there has raised contentions on that. In the Senate, you need at least one senator as well to raise contentions. There's at least 14, 15, 16 senators which are putting their hand up, like Hawley, Senator Hawley, who put his hand up first. He started this whole avalanche with the senators, and you've got Ted Cruz leading the charge as well. And we'll see what happens. So basically, coming back to tomorrow, what's going to happen, we're going to end up with a situation where Mike Pence is going to get these envelopes, and where there's contentions, they're going to go away for each contention, for each state. They're going to have 2 hours to debate. They're going to have a vote, and then they're going to go from there, basically. Now, that's option 1. That, according to the American Constitution, that's not technically what should be happening. I've been listening a lot to Charlie Kirk and Donald Trump's lawyer Rudy Giuliani recently. There are 2 ways this plays out, this count tomorrow. I've just laid out option 1. Option 1 is according to the 1887 Electoral Act, which is where, Mike Pence, as I explained, goes through these votes, and they have their 2-hour debates where there's contentions and goes through all that. Rudy Giuliani doesn't actually say that's the constitutional way forward. Technically, what's meant to happen is they're meant to have a situation where Mike Pence gets these rival electors, and he says, okay, this doesn't make any sense, because each state legislator, the legislative body, just like in New South Wales, how we've got our own legislative bodies, where Mark Latham operates. Similarly, in the states, in each state, they have their own legislative bodies, and they send their electors to be counted by Mike Pence. So Mike Pence gets these rival electors for these states, one from the Republicans, one from the Democrats. He's like, I need clarification. Which one do I count? So what he should be doing, and this is what Rudy Giuliani argues, is we should be going back to these legislators and asking a clarification on these 6 or 7 states, so I won't count them. Now, that's what he should be doing. But whether that happens or not, that's the real question. So it's going to be a very wild ride, no matter what happens. So in one situation, we get a situation where he goes through each state. They take votes depending on, for 2 hours, depending on each state that comes up. And in the other case, he goes back to the legislators and they clarify
now,
who they're
I've
sending.
also heard rumours today, I don't know if you've heard these, that Pence is looking at resigning and potentially resigning before tomorrow. Have you heard any of those rumours?
I've heard heaps of those rumours, but the problem is most people telling me them are QAnon people. And unfortunately, the hit rate isn't that great with the QAnon people, unfortunately.
Right. Do you want to quickly give a... I've known that QAnon was on the outskirts, I would say, of the Trump community. With some people I like who follow it quite closely.
Yep.
But then other people saying that, if Trump doesn't win this election, that this whole QAnon thing is garbage.
Yeah.
And there's also, QAnon also got this started getting mainstream news media coverage from progressive outlets as kind of a big...
conspiracy theory promoting alt-right gateway.
Do you have a particular opinion on QAnon before we get back to the presidential stuff?
All I can tell you is I haven't looked into it significantly, but the little that I have seen has been absolute bullcrap. I mean, honestly, you look into a few of the claims they make. I mean, I think that some of them are saying that this Q guy is Donald Trump himself. I'm like, are you serious?
He doesn't know how to use Reddit, I guarantee.
Yeah, well,
They can use Twitter pretty good.
I wouldn't put him in a box. I'm not insulting Donald Trump. I think he's incredibly brilliant, but some of the QAnon stuff, whatever happens, we're going to find out whether it's BS or not over the next few days. I mean, some of the things that Lynn Wood has been saying has been absolutely crazy. I mean,
I saw your post about. I'd never seen Linwood before. He's a lawyer in America.
Yeah, just like Sidney Powell, he's very respected in what he's done. He was the lawyer for the Covington high school kid who beat CNN.
Right.
So he's good at his job.
Sandman.
Nick Sandman. But even Nick Sandman on Twitter was like, what the hell, man? Why are you saying we shouldn't vote in Georgia? That makes no freaking sense. Also, why are you telling people that Mike Pence should be put up against a wall and a firing squad should be done on him? This is some crazy stuff and some big claims.
That's what Linwood was saying.
Oh, yeah, he's either absolutely. I mean, he's either dead crazy or he's dead right, and I don't know which one. But we're gonna find out. So strap in. There's nothing we can do as an Australians, but eat popcorn, drink whiskey, and have shisha, and watch this. I don't want to call it a shit show, but it's crazy. But look, all of this is going to happen in the next sort of 48 hours. Don't be surprised tomorrow if the debates go for longer than 24 hours. It could be very long. 2 hours per state. Anywhere from 6 to 10 states could be brought up.
Anything from you guys?
My question is, realistically, so you've mentioned the widespread perceived voter fraud, but it's been basically kind of accepted by the mainstream media that there isn't substantial evidence or evidence enough to warrant...
YouTube takes down any video that suggests voter fraud could have changed the election results.
Exactly right. So YouTube's come out and said we will basically remove anyone who invalidates the electoral process or undermines the integrity of the election, even though basically it has been conceded that at every single election there has been some degree of foul play. Whether or not the foul play has been significant enough to actually change the outcome of the election, that's disputed.
Yeah.
Is there actually an avenue for Donald Trump to win from here?
Yeah, look, there's three. I just laid two. There was the option 1 and option 2. One's constitutional, one's not, which is the 1887 Electoral Act. The third option is all avenues fail him, and he invokes the Insurrection Act, which was basically created to protect the American people's civil rights if their civil rights are being violated, if their freedom of speech, if their right to a fair and honest election have been violated, and there's been international interference, which might come up. Who knows what bombshells Donald Trump and these senators drop during these 2-hour debates if they happen tomorrow? Who knows? If all of that comes out, then maybe he's well within his rights to drop the Insurrection Act and, maybe declare martial law as well, get the military in. That's what Michael Flynn's been pushing, and rerun the elections. It wouldn't be the first time it's happened, actually. It's happened before with Abraham Lincoln. Where he absolutely before him there was a really feckless president, and he didn't do anything. And Abraham Lincoln came along, he cleaned the whole place up. I think he suspended habeas corpus.
Yeah, that's right.
And what is that? I had a mind blank the other day. I couldn't remember. Is it the right to free speech or the right to fair trial? It's something along those lines.
I think it is. Yeah. So it's. I think it is the right to basically a fair trial.
But
so I think he suspended it. Was it during the Civil War?
I think so. Yeah, during the Civil War. But he was just to show you how militant he was, and even he reran the election, and in that situation, it was pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy what ended up happening. Maybe that needs to happen to set the record straight. I don't know, but you know what? I think there are still avenues. I'll be the first to say that Donald Trump has lost, but I just can't yet. I actually can't. He still has avenues. No matter, it's like with Brexit. They keep saying, "Oh, you've lost this and that," yet they keep defying the odds every time a vote comes around.
Do you think he legitimately won?
It's hard to say. It's
what
really,
is your
it's
gut,
really hard
what
to
is
say.
your gut feeling?
Well, my gut feeling is absolutely.
And that there was actual widespread voter fraud.
Absolutely. I mean, I haven't even begun to scrape the surface of the irregularities that we saw. The amount of bellwether metrics that Joe Biden defied. There's a really great video I uploaded. It's called "Joe Biden is the greatest president in American history."
Yeah.
Because what he pulled off is insane. 80 million votes. He beat the first black president ever who got like 69 million votes or something. He ended up winning more counties than Obama. Obama, when he won his presidency, he won 800 or something counties. Joe Biden won 400 counties. So these votes were concentrated even more so than they usually are with they were with Obama. I mean, all these bellwether counties, Joe Biden won, he lost 18 out of the 19 bellwether counties.
What does bellwether mean?
Bellwether means it's an indicator of who's going to win the presidency. Right. Every
like
time.
A swing state.
Yeah, it's sort of like a swing state, but no, it's not a swing state. It predicts every time a president wins, this county predicts it. That's what it is. Right. So it's very in tune who will win. So out of 18 out of 19 or something, bellwether counties, was a situation. Whether it be, he defied the cookie sales numbers. Donald Trump was selling more cookies, yet Joe Biden still won. It's a weird metric, but it's a metric.
It's a Tim Pool video.
It's the Tim Pool video, yeah.
So he basically goes through and he says, Joe Biden, to have won, must have beaten all of these kind of slightly obscure but actually pretty reliable indicators of who's going to win the presidency. So it's like voter enthusiasm, voter turnout, all of the like cookie sales.
Yeah.
Like it's on their own, they're kind of a little bit obscure, but when put together, they actually form like a pretty reasonable statistical basis for who's actually most likely to win the presidency.
It's insane. And there's other ones too, like a Republican. I kept saying this before the election. I said, Donald Trump's going to get more than 15% of the black vote. That never happens. Republicans traditionally get 8% of the black vote. Mitt Romney got that much. No, John McCain got that much.
I've got a feeling Romney only got 1%, but Trump got 8% in his first.
No, that's not right. Mitt Romney got 8%.
I'll quickly look that up.
I'm very certain. I got it from. I was listening to David Hansen. He said that recently. It's also in the Vice interview as well. The Blexit video I was talking about earlier today. Yeah. But no, it was Mitt Romney got 8%. John McCain got 8%. Donald Trump got 10%. And there's this saying, if a Republican presidential candidate gets 15% of the vote or more ongoing, the Democrats will never win another presidential election again. Donald Trump got 17% of the vote.
Yeah.
So that's another metric he defied. He also increased his Hispanic vote. That's why the Republicans did so well in Florida and the Democrats were so annoyed with how well they did.
So basically, as far as I can tell, it all comes back then to the alleged voter turnout, right? Because the only way that you can justify that Joe Biden lost on all these bellwether metrics but still won is that there was an exceptional voter turnout and that the voter turnout, for whatever reason, all the people who did come out who wouldn't normally come out, almost every single one of those people voted Democrat.
That's right.
So that's basically, as far as I can tell, the only way that you can possibly justify defeating all those metrics. Is that your understanding?
Well, it's when you say coming out, let's be very specific. On the day, the votes were all for Trump. That's why initially Trump was leading, for example, Pennsylvania by 800,000 votes on the election night. We were all there. We were all at CPAC. We saw this. Yet there was a big jump in the middle of the night. And I just realized Alex wasn't there.
So I wasn't there. I was there in spirit.
He was there in spirit. In the middle of the night, this 800,000 vote count got reduced by 700,000. They closed the gap, 700,000 votes. Not one vote for Trump, barely any votes for Trump at all. And why is this happening? And this ties into a lot of the lawsuits that Donald Trump had. A lot of the Republican areas, a lot of the Republican lawsuits that happened, the thing that they were challenging was the validity and the constitutionality, the state constitutionality, not the federal constitution, the state constitutionality of changing the rules of voting. The rules of voting were to do with mail-in voting. For example, in Pennsylvania, they didn't change it properly. They started the process, but they didn't finish it. And so what they were trying to do was they were trying to get the Supreme Court to throw out this situation. They were trying to get the Supreme Court to throw out the votes for that. But they didn't even get their day in court. That was the problem.
So one of the things that I've heard is that one of the reasons why the Democrats wanted to push the lockdown so hard and to kind of invite the media on a scare campaign with regards to COVID was to basically normalise mail-in voting. Because if you cannot go and physically put your vote in, everyone has to social distance, everyone's wearing masks, you don't want to risk, say, a super spreader event, then it basically totally legitimises mail-in voting. And for whatever reason, I'm sure you've probably got a better understanding of it. Number one, why is it that mail-in voting tends to almost entirely come in Democrat? And do you think there's any truth to the idea that the reason why the Democrats and kind of left-wing in general pushed the COVID narrative so hard was to basically improve their chances of landsliding the election through mail-in votes?
The Pennsylvania legislators were putting in provisions to mail-in vote before COVID was a thing. They were doing it in 2019. We know they knew about it. We know that they were trying to change it. We've known since, and I sat down with our mutual friend John Ruddick and talked about this. He was on Q&A debating a supposed a former Republican staffer. She didn't know a bloody thing about mail-in voting. Not a bloody thing. She said there's frankly no evidence to suggest that mail-in voting is fraudulent. Yet, the New York Times in 2012 said that mail-in voting, there's a 2% error rate. What is that? That's a lot. That's
a
lot.
lot when elections are decided by 2% margins or less.
And when you have universal mail-in voting, what the hell is universal mail-in voting? Universal mail-in voting is where you send out mail-in ballots to everyone. Everyone, whether they're going to vote in person or not. So you could literally vote twice.
And there was the Project Veritas dump of, I can't remember, is it Minnesota where Ilhan Omar is?
Yeah, I think so.
And there was a dump of Democratic staffers who worked, I believe, for her office or were contracted by her office to go and supply and pick up the mail-in votes. The law is that any person at one time cannot be carrying more than 3. This guy had hundreds in his car and was bragging on video about getting all this money, getting his bread, getting his paper, which I don't blame him for in some types of ways, except when it's
overthrowing a government.
A
soft coup.
A soft coup
from the back of his car.
A soft coup from the back of his car, but I respect the hustle.
Yeah.
Just that immigrant mentality. But so and so there was that on video, and I think Trump might have, at least I believe Trump Jr. Talked about it or tweeted it. It might have even got to Trump's account, but firstly, quick shout out to Project Veritas for being one of the only media organizations I actually respect. Probably the only media company doing real investigative journalism, while everyone else is just taking briefings from the either White House office or Democrat or from the DNC on what they're allowed to talk about, or FBI, CIA, right? There seems to be not one Pentagon. There seem not to be many original thoughts generated by the mainstream media anywhere. So James O'Keefe and Project Veritas, shout out to you.
Yeah.
But, Trump was talking about mail-in voting is going to be the biggest problem, right, in the months leading up to the election. Yeah. Why do you think that the Democrats were able to get a front foot on mail-in voting and the Republicans weren't able to kind of catch up or play the same game of chess the Democrats were playing?
You mean, why didn't they push for mail-in voting more? Why didn't they do it?
Why weren't they able to keep in check and keep the public properly informed of the risks of mail-in voting? Why was Trump able to do it, but why didn't people follow him? Why weren't people paying attention to that in the months coming up to the election?
It's about who has the biggest mic, really. It's as simple as that. It's power. It's who had all the institutions, who had all the media, That's it's simple as that.
Well, the mail-in votes, that's going to be a big day tomorrow. Unless you guys have any more questions for Joel on that. I want to talk a little...
I do have
Andy
one
has a question
actually
for Joel on that.
I always enjoy Andy's questions.
What's that supposed to mean?
That means I enjoy your questions. Keep going. Don't let me hold you up.
Well, I think the question is, ever since kind of the election and Trump has been pushing the idea that there are these bombshells which are coming out, and they have kind of slowly been coming out, but they haven't really been picked up by the media, I would say. And considering your analysis there, which is that tomorrow or the next 48 hours kind of is the time for that to happen, if there are no bombshells that come out from the Trump campaign, is that kind of is that the deadline? Is that when nothing else after that is kind of the bombshells won't be effective after that, or is tomorrow the day where it does come out? Is that D-Day? Is that where the explosions come and the soldiers get off the transports and storm the beach?
It's probably 90% tomorrow's the last day, or the next 48 hours is the last day. I say 48 hours because tomorrow could get dragged out. Yeah. You've got to understand, with these processes, we talk about constitutionality and the way things should run, like we're dealing with robots. Yeah. We're dealing with people. And the thing with people is sometimes they can be no. For example, Kamala Harris, when she didn't give evidence to save a man's life who was on death row. She just said, no, I'm not going to do it. Even though a judge ruled that she had to do it, she still didn't do it. They were going to have a constitutional crisis there. It's just people. So laws will not make people just do things. So technically anything could happen. But I think I'm 90% sure whatever's going to happen will happen in the next 48 hours. With what happens in Georgia and with what happens with Mike Pence.
Clip that.
Well, given that in our social media content schedule is supposed to come out on Sunday, but there's a good argument for fast tracking this to tomorrow, given that a lot of the content won't be relevant after tomorrow. So that's just a clip. That's just a directive for Fiona, the producer. But what I want to talk about next is you've heard